Hello, Eden. How's it going? How's it going, Derek? So, okay. Screen up here.
Hello.
Sorry about having to reschedule or move my schedule.
He wants to design this too because there's.
This will probably need to be the new time, 11 o'clock on Fridays. Mountain time. Okay. Derek, did you have anything you needed to cover today? I'm going to stop sharing real quick. And Eden, did you have anything specific that you want to cover?
Not particularly. I think that I'm still having a little bit of troubles making like a line thickness meet or like an outline, if that makes sense, in a clean way.
Do you happen to have any examples of any files that you're working on that weren't working?
It was the one that I had emailed you about earlier in the week.
Okay, let me see if I can pull that one up. Just a minute here. Have a good Thanksgiving?
Yeah, for the most part, not anything to complain about.
Good. Okay, I'm gonna search for email from you. The Burton one.
Yeah, it's the like the lines on the top of the design that I couldn't make meet as well as I was hoping to.
If I can open this up here. Sorry, my computer's being a little slow. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. Try it this way. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep, looks good.
Okay, so on this particular design, I'm going to make a copy of it to show you kind of the things I noticed. Okay. So first of all, the thing that I notice is this panel here has been stretched. And what I mean by that is if we look at the width of this, so if I just take a freehand line and draw from there to there perpendicularly, it's telling me that it's 0.094 inches, okay? But if I come up to this one and I click from here to here, it's 0.116 inches. So I can see from that, you know, it's, turn off my parallel drawing. Okay, so I can see from that it's been stretched, and I can visually see that it's stretched because if we look at the chamfer or the corner, it's actually elongated as well. So if I had a guess, my guess is that you had the panel and stretched it, you know, starting out with something like this.
Yeah, I think that is what happened. I think I sent you the reference. Oh, sorry about the noise. I think I sent you the reference and it ended up being sized differently than we had originally thought. So things had to get moved around and it kind of just ended up being a mess there for a minute.
Yeah, and I didn't see any other emails from you. So it would have just, if you did send it to me, I apologize. I don't think it came through.
Not a biggie.
Could have gone to junk, I suppose. Yeah, I don't know. So what happens is if you build a panel like this, okay, there's two different things that you can do. Is either change the size of the existing panel or rebuild the panel. Usually I'd probably just delete the existing one and rebuild it, and I'll show you the two different things and why I'd do one over the other. So if you grab a panel like this and stretch it, I'm going to make it really stretchy just so that you can see what happens. The more you stretch it, the more that is going to be incorrect, okay, because it's actually stretching those lines. So it gets too big on the top and the bottom. The left and right don't change just because the way that it works, but the top and bottom will get too big. So if you needed to make the panel, excuse me, make the panel larger, what you would use instead is the shape tool. The shape tool gives you access to the nodes. And so that way you can grab the nodes that make up the panel. And if you select around them like this, it turns them filled as opposed to white. And that means they're selected. And you can see that there's a blue line and a red line. The blue one is your main line and your red line is your secondary. Because the lines, the objects are not combined together, you've actually got two different objects. And you can see down here at the bottom, it says two objects selected. So that's why they're outlined in different colors. But if you select all the nodes and then click any one of these nodes, it doesn't matter which one, but if you click and hold down and start moving it, I usually hold control while I do that so that it constrains it to a straight line. But if you click and drag and then hold control, then you can place it where you want, and it's not going to stretch those lines. It's just moving the nodes up. You can also do it with a nudge. So if you set your nudge distance to like 1/8 of an inch, you can just use your arrow keys. The difference though is with nudge, it only nudges the main object that you have. So if you're using nudge, you actually have to nudge this one. And you have to remember how many clicks you do. So let's say we do 1, 2, 3 clicks. Then you can click on this one, grab those nodes and do 1, 2, 3 clicks. So you can be more precise that way because it's actually numerical and you give it a number. I usually just do it visually because it's faster to, you know, grab all those at the same time. And usually I'm just doing it visually anyway to see how it looks. But with a panel, most of the time you want to make sure that your text is spaced out evenly and that it's also spaced out away from the panel correctly in case you ever needed to duplicate it, you know, that you can get it exact. So in that case, what I would normally do is just start from scratch. So I just grab your text instead. So delete the panel, grab your text, come over to panels and spacing, and do a single line, scalloped corner, filled panel, hit apply, and then it'll rebuild the panel for you. And it also does the spacing for you at the same time. So it's giving us 1/2 inch spacing. So you can see here, this comma is not touching the panel, where if I back up, the comma was actually touching the panel. So that way we've got our panel rebuilt and sized correctly, and it's also going to give you the corners the right way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. I was having issues particularly about the like the lines above the I ended up having to hand draw this because we didn't have the correct artwork. It was just a big mess, and that's why I had so many lines when I was layering it. But and I have an updated version where I have moved some stuff around and fixed some stuff.
Okay.
But like at the arch at the top, I thickened up the lines. And
Do you want to email me that version?
I think I did, but let me double check and make sure that I can always resend it.
Yeah, just resend it, just because I don't see it on my end, so. Wait, maybe it was. Oh, looks like it went to my junk mail, so I've got it here. Let's tell it not to be junk. Not junk.
Okay, so you do have it?
Yeah, it just went to my junk box.
Okay, good deal.
Just a second.
And I didn't change out it entirely, and there was still a lot that needed fixed, but
Gotcha. Okay, sorry about not seeing this email.
not a biggie.
Oops, save this one. And we've got the reference file as well. All right, so I'm going to open up this fixed one then, or your newer version. Go to download. I don't know why, but my computer's being extremely slow today. Okay, so we're going to take a look at this. All right. So I go in between the wireframe and the enhanced view quite a bit to see what's going on here. You do have line thickness now applied to those single lines, which you didn't have before. And it looks like you've applied a line thickness to this one as well. Okay. And we've got these lines. Okay, so I'm gonna show you how I would do this a little differently than the way you've got it done, okay?
Sounds good.
I'm actually going to delete this line here. I'm going to delete this one. This one's duplicated, so I'm going to delete that too. That one's duplicated, so I'm going to delete that one. See, that's the bottom line of that top part, but it also is a repeat of this inside line here. Gosh, you got a lot of them. I'm going to try something different. Okay, I'm going to grab the design. And we are going to run remove duplicates on it and see what happens. 71 overlapping objects still exist, and there are deleted 6 duplicated objects. So let's see what it didn't delete. It wasn't able to delete this one. it turns anything blue that's still overlapping. You can see we've got a lot of overlapping pieces here.
Yeah, it
have-
was something I worked back and forth on and was still learning. I mean, I'm still learning a lot, obviously, and it was just.
Do you know what original design you started with?
I mean, it was on that one. I just continued to go from that one.
Did you draw this from the reference or did you?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just delete a bunch of stuff. And because it's a mirror, you know, this side is the same as that side, I don't really need any of this. So I'm just gonna get rid of it all, okay?
Alrighty.
And this one here, if I grab that and I just drag a ruler from the left to the middle here, that's a guideline. I can actually use what's called virtual segment delete to trim all this back to that guideline. And that way I'm just going to have this one side to start with. Okay. And I'll delete this one. I'm basically deleting all of your outline stuff. You want to make sure that still not overlapping pieces. So this blue stuff is all duplicated. Get rid of all these little things. Okay, I think that's gonna get us to where we want to be. So these lines here that are going to make that inside portion, we're gonna use those, but we will mess with those later. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm gonna grab those and I'm just gonna cut them, Control X, and I'll put them on another document just to come back to them later. And then actually, I think I'll do the same thing with these single lines here too. Okay, so we've got those ones. And I want to cut these ones too, so I will Control X to get rid of those. Control V to get them onto this new document. The reason I'm putting them in a new document is that if I do a Control X and Control V, it will actually place them in the new document in the same spot that they were in. Whereas if I were to move them somewhere, then I'd have to realign it. So I'm just going to remove it for now. And then let's look at, okay. I'm also going to import the one that you're matching. So I've got the email attached, or I've got the email selected. So I'm just going to hit this button to import the Outlook attachments. That way I can grab this. And in order to work over the top of it, did you like change and adjust that image? How did you decide to?
No, I did not know how, and I think that's why a lot of it isn't exact. And like I said, he didn't say it had to, or he said it did not have to be exact, but it was just kind of a trial and error for me, honestly.
Sure. Well, so normally if I'm gonna try to duplicate something, what I would do is I would start with, you know, the photo here, and obviously get the size of the stone. So the size of the stone is 20 by 24. And then I would take this, and if you grab it, so if you notice, I grab it right down here in the corner, because if I grab it in the corner, I can snap it to this corner and then I will drag it like this to resize it to get it close to where it's supposed to be. It's still not going to be exact, but it's going to be close. And then from there, I'm going to go to object and say perspective, add perspective. And what I can do is grab the four corners of my image. And as I do that, it will help me straighten out this design. And it also looks like you have an e-final date card on there. Do you use that for straightening stuff out?
Yeah, we've started trying to. It didn't work out with that specific stone because not all of us have used it a whole lot.
Okay.
But yeah, that was the intention.
Okay, yeah, so I mean, efinaldate.com, the idea is that when you put that card down on there, that it's, you know, going to help you straighten it out automatically, but we can go ahead and manually do the same thing here. We're just grabbing the corners, and the way that I work is I'll usually work kind of clockwise, you know, grab one corner, and then while I'm doing that, I'll get that corner set to where I want, and then I'll move to the next one, and then I'll move down, you know, kind of in a clockwise direction. And then I will keep doing that, just go around and around until I get that basically to be the way that I want it to be. So now that I've got that straightened out, then when I start working on the design, I would just work right over the top of the original, right? So I'd have my design that I'm working on. Work on it this way. That way, size-wise, it would be the same as the one that is already existing. Okay.
Okay, gotcha. I think that's probably where a lot of it did get funky, was because I wasn't working in the like correct perspective for the, based on the way the picture was.
Right. Yeah, I just find it easier to do that. Especially if you're trying to match something that way. When it's out in the cemetery, they'll, you know, line up nicely with each other. But with the way that you've got this currently drawn, I'm just going to look at yours and look at the original, and we will see what we can do to get them to match up. So
yeah, I had taken the like base of the actual flower of the tulip from artwork we already had, and that's why it's a little bit different, but that was the only thing I had taken. I had just changed it some.
Gotcha. Well, if you get to this point right here, you should be able to, and we're going to need to close this off in order for it to work. So we're just going to grab these two nodes and extend them to a close. And then the same thing with these, we're going to extend those ones so they close. So by having those closed, then we can grab the whole of it, all of this, and combine it together. And if we combine it together, then what happens is the fastest way to do it is just to use this frosted outline button. But if you want to do it manually, over here on the left is a contour tool. And using contour, we can say 0.09 inches, one step to the outside, and it will then contour that. And it's going to give us all of those inside pieces that we need. And we're just going to break that contour apart after we've done it so that the contour is separate from the original design. So now this has been separated from the original. The only thing that we really need to do is delete some of this inside stuff. So virtual segment delete, we can click on those to get rid of them. And that looks like about it for that. And if we go back to this one where we had copied and pasted these, so we'll just grab those, cut them again, paste them back in. So you had line thickness applied to these, which is fine. That's, you know, if you just hit the line width button, it's going to make those a 0.09 inch line. But what you have to do is you need to make sure, one, that this line extends all the way into here. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a little notch right there when you convert it. So right now, these are single lines. And if we hit V, you will see in the wireframe view that they're just single lines with an outline applied. And so when you're working with single lines with an outline applied, what you need to do is just kind of extend these a little bit, and I'll hold Q so that it doesn't try to snap to anything. So while I'm moving it, I'm holding Q. Okay, and pull this one in like this. Then we can grab all of those. And I'm actually just going to do these ones, not the ones inside the vein or the flowers. And I'm going to combine them together. And then I would go up to object and say convert outline to object, or Control Shift Q. And what that does, if we undo, you'll have your single lines. If you hit Control Shift Q, then it'll take those single lines and turn them into the double lines for you.
Okay, I could not figure out how to manage that because I knew in regards to plotting, because that was a lot of the issues that we had.
Right. Yeah, it's got to
That
be
it's messy, but
it's got to be a double line. So it's nice to be able to work with single lines with outlines applied to them, because you know, it's kind of easier to draw that way, and then you can change your outline thicknesses all at once and that sort of stuff if you need to. But the drawback to it is that you need to convert those outlines to objects in order for them to cut correctly, and also, you know, in order for us to get these to weld to the other piece of the design, we need to fix that as well. So I've converted them to an outline so that I've got my double lines now for those inside pieces. And then we're going to grab, this is really, really slow. Just a minute here. I'm going to go to my task manager really quick. It's taking up all my memory. I'm not sure what's taking up all my memory, but something's slowing things down. Oh, my son's Minecraft is playing in the background. That would probably do it. All right, close down Minecraft. Now I should be good to go. Let's hope that speeds things up. Okay, so I've got these, and I'm going to combine both of those together. So I've got all of this stuff is combined together. That way, when I grab this stuff and this stuff, holding Shift, grabbing both of those together, I can hit W to weld it. And what that does is anywhere that those pieces are overlapping, it's going to delete these overlapped sections correctly. Okay, it's not going to work if I didn't have these welded together first. So if I broke them apart and I grabbed these and tried to weld here, that's what it would look like, which is not right, right? And if I tried to grab just the outline, they're going to disappear altogether. So it's a very important step that you take all of that inside stuff, all of your original design minus these and these ones, and combine them all together first so that these become a single object with that outline too. All of that needs to be combined together first so that when we do weld it, it's going to weld correctly. Does that make sense?
yeah, that's super helpful.
No, it's kind of tricky, but those are the steps you have to take. And then on these, I don't really like having veins in leaves or flowers or anything, kind of just have a end like that that's done that way. So if we were to convert them to curves, we could, you know, hit Control Shift Q on this, And now it's the double line, but then we'd have to come in and manually edit the ending of it so that it's a little nicer, which isn't a bad thing to do. It's not, you know, too painful, but I wouldn't want it to just be a straight line or straight across. So an alternative to using the line width tool is if we use artistic media instead. Artistic media has presets that you can use as far as how lines start and end. And so you can choose one like this and give it a line thickness, and it's automatically going to make it look like that for you. But again, it's an effect. So if we go to the wireframe, we'll see the original line and we'll see the outline on it. And so for this to cut correctly, we need to get rid of that middle line. And the way you do it manually is you'd have to, you know, grab your artistic media strokes, come up here to object, say break artistic media group apart, and then select the middle one and hit delete. So that's how you do it manually. But I do have a keyboard shortcut where if you just grab the strokes and hit the comma button on your keyboard, it will automatically break it apart and delete those center lines for you rather quickly. So I would just use the keyboard shortcut myself if I was doing it. But you can see how that, I mean, it looks slightly different than if you're going to go about it this way. But I also didn't need to change anything manually, which is nice. So now that I've got that all drawn up, I would go ahead and grab all of it and hit this button, fill grayscale. And what fill grayscale does is it's going to take all your outside pieces and combine them. And something's wrong right here. I just noticed, so we need to look at what's going on right here. We're going to, that's right. Something's not right here though. Looks like we had an extra line. I must have forgot to delete one of those original lines, so that's why it's messed up. So it's 2. Okay. Now that's back to the way it should be, except that it doesn't have the veins. So we need to redo fill grayscale in order to get those to work. So now it's all filled in the right way. All we need to do now is mirror it to the other side, right? And so what we can do is we can, if we want to, we can delete these lines ahead of time that we don't want or don't need. Just going to delete those, delete these ones. And so now it's all opened up the way that I need it to be. And if I grab all of the stuff that we've got, minus this, the name, we don't want the name. If we grab all of this, if you grab it from the left handle and start dragging to the right, it will be able to mirror on itself. But if you hold control while you do that, then it constrains to the same size that it was. If you go too far in or too far out, it's going to double that size. But if you just pull your mouse over to here, it'll snap into, and you got to really pull a ways for it to stretch out. And so you can feel that as you pull the way that it works. But you would hold control while you do that, and you right click to make a copy. And so I've got control, press down, and my right mouse button I clicked and let go of, and it gave me a little plus sign there. Now if I let go of my left mouse button and then I let go of control, it's going to throw a copy of it down there that's mirrored. And then I would grab both of those, combine them together, and then we've only got these pieces here that I need to join. So I grab them and hit J on the keyboard, J, J, and J. And what that does is it joins together those pieces, but it also looks like we've got an extra piece here for some reason. What's going on here? Maybe we don't. It joined and I just didn't realize it. And a lot of times we don't really need these nodes, so I would just delete all those anyway. I don't need that node. Get rid of it. This one here, I forgot to join those ones, so I'm going to hold control, grab those, J, hit J, and then just delete those lines. I don't really need them. Nodes, I meant, not lines. Okay, so now we've got the whole thing on both sides fixed. And then all I really need to do is edit these ends. It's kind of a mess over here, so I don't really need any of this stuff. If I click it and hit 1 on the keyboard, it's going to change it to a straight line segment. And then a straight line segment will let you just drag it like this. And we would want to, usually you're going to want to pull this one back to the edge so that you don't have an overlap. And then this one, if you just barely slightly bring it in like this, then it will fill in correctly when we use fill grayscale. If this part of the object is not inside this object, it's not going to know how to fill it because it's looking for objects that are smaller than other ones. So we need to make sure that we bring this one in just slightly. So grab that, hit 1 on the keyboard, pull this one up like that, pull these ones back ever so slightly. Something like that. Okay. And then now that we've got that done, we can grab this. And I'm going to hold Shift and deselect this and deselect this so that all I have selected is this stuff. And then I'll hit Fill Grayscale. And Fill Grayscale then looks for all the inside pieces, combines them together, turns them 10% gray, and then leaves just the outline filled with black. We'll grab our original stone shape and refill it with 30%. Shift page down, we'll bring it to the back. And because I ran the remove duplicates tool on this, it actually converted all this text to curves, which is not really what I wanted to have happen. So I shouldn't have used that on there. The wrong button too. So what I'll do is I'll go back to this one, grab my text, grab all of my text, put it back in here. And I changed the names just because I'll be posting this to YouTube, so hopefully that's okay. Reapply. Something like that. Make sense?
Okay. Yeah, that makes so much more sense than what I was trying to do. I mean,
you can draw without, and so if I were to draw this from scratch, right? If I were just starting over and drawing from scratch, there's kind of 2 different ways that you can draw. One is that while you're drawing, you're only drawing the inside lines. So you come like this and you click over here and over here. And obviously there are different drawing tools, so you can do it a bunch of different ways. But one of the ways is to use your drawing tools and only do this portion of the line. Okay, and then the next one you would come back and do the next piece and come like this. And then this one you'd come over and do the next piece like this. And as we go about this, we're just going to change these to curves and move them around. So you can do it this way. The downside to doing it this way is that these line thicknesses are basically matching up to the way we have it on the photo, but they're not necessarily any sort of exact number or anything particular. And also, if the way that I drew it, so I'm going to take out all the fills on this. If the way that I drew it, you know, if maybe I made this line a little too high or something, then the thickness of that line is also not consistent. So I don't actually like to draw this way myself very much, just because there's too much room for error. So instead of going about it that way, what I normally do if I'm trying to duplicate something like this is I draw in the center. So I'm going to draw instead a center line, and I'll just go like this. Okay. And I'll convert it all to curves. And then I'm going to pull these lines the way that I want them. Okay, something like that. And then instead I would apply a line width to it. And by doing that, it's going to be consistent all the way around. So as I draw this, and what you need to pay attention to is because I'm drawing one line, then I have to come up here and, you know, click my node and keep drawing. And so I normally don't actually apply the line thickness until I've got all my lines drawn, and then I'll apply the line thickness, and then I will mess with it after that. Because you can do it all at once, okay? So if I go around this design, and I'm not going to do the whole thing just for the sake of time, but if I do go, I'll just make a couple pieces like this. And another thing that's tricky too is if you're doing this, but fitting it in with another design, like you said, you already had a flower that was similar, then it works a little differently. So because the flower that you already had was not drawn with center lines, the flower that you already had would have already, you know, had those outlines converted to curves and stuff, or your objects converted. So I will just kind of show you how this works. Curve. Okay, so I've got my lines, most of them that I need. And if I combine them together, so if I grab all of these and combine them together, one thing that happens when you combine them all together is they become one object. And so becoming one object, they only have one set of properties, which means that they're all going to be that same line width. And the nice thing about combining them together is that once we convert the outline to an object, it will automatically do all of this welding and stuff for us so that all of those double lines overlap each other the right way. If they weren't combined first, so if these were not combined first, if they were broken apart, meaning that they are all separated from each other, then if we grabbed these and went up to object and converted the outline to an object, then what happens is all of these turn into lines like that, which is similar to how we had it before, right? And they're not welded together yet. So then we'd have to re-grab all of them and weld them in order for it to work correctly. So you save a step, the welding step, you save that step if you combine them together first before converting your outline to an object. But one of the reasons that I really like drawing a single line to begin with is that, let's say we got this entire thing drawn and it was all drawn with single lines, we could actually have this design scalable in that if we made it bigger, the line width stay 0.09 inches. And if we made it a little smaller, the line width stay 0.09 inches. So you can reuse that on a different size stone easier because it's scalable. It's just drawn with those line thicknesses. And so I'll usually draw originally with, you know, single lines all the way around to make it work, save that as its own piece of artwork in a scalable folder. And then I will finish up doing all my combines and stuff and converting the outlines for the version that I'm cutting so that I've got the original to work off of later in case I needed to use it on a different stone, you know, that was a different size. So any questions on that, how that works?
I do not think so. And that is all super helpful.
I'm gonna look real quick to see what Derek had texted to. or chatted. I was just seeing Derek if you needed to, if I needed to mention anything that you had written, but I think we covered most of what you had said. So yeah, I mean, I've just worked my way around it just like that. And that's why, again, I size the picture the way that I do, so that as I work over the top of the original, and normally I'm also going to apply a transparency to it, just because that way it's, you know, I can see what I'm working on a little bit better than that. And if you also right click on it and say lock, then as you're drawing, you don't accidentally click on the image. So when I'm setting up a design for duplication, that's usually what I'll do is I'll size it, I'll change my perspective if needed, I'll make it transparent, and then I'll lock it in place so that as I'm going and drawing, you know, around this, that I can do that. So we'll just but I'll just go ahead and, since the one that you created was slightly different than this one, as far as size and stuff, and since you were going to duplicate this, let's just go ahead and finish it real quick. So I'm just going to continue, and the way that I like to draw is with the Polyline tool. I'm just going to click everywhere that I know that the direction of this curve is changing. That's kind of where I place a click. Okay. And then I'll hit Control-A to select all my nodes, and then I will convert it to curves, and then I will grab that and bend either the handles or the shape itself, excuse me, to kind of shape this, you know, the way that I want it to be. Okay, going around like that, like that. Yeah. I'm going to change these ones back to not having an outline. That way it's all going to look consistent as I draw this. And again, because this shape is, you know, a mirror of itself, I'm just going to drag a guideline to here so that I'm only going to there. I don't need to draw the rest of it. And I don't always use the Polyline, but I use it most often. There are other drawing tools. So I could take like the 3-point curve, for instance, and click here and over to here, and then click like that. Sometimes this one's a little easier. And I also don't have snap to guidelines on. So if I had checked that, then I can snap here and snap there. And then it'll snap into place. Sometimes though, if this is the size of the stone, okay, if I know that this is the size that I'm going to purchase, 20 by 24, and this looks a little tall to me. Yeah, it's 1.8 inches, so I wonder if maybe you stretch that too. When it comes to the shape of the stone itself, so I would use Shape Builder to build it, and I would just build it so that it's 20 inches, 24 inches, with an 1.5 inch drop, which is pretty standard. Oops. I would start with this shape like that. So if the original was this, you know, that height, it looks like it's a little taller. So I'm going to drag that up just a little bit. Okay. Relock this. Pull that up. Okay, there we go. So I was just looking at the shape of this compared to what we had before, and it wasn't quite the same. But if I'm trying to draw the top of my arch to match that SERP, I'd normally grab the SERP of the stone and then just do a contour. So I'm just going to contour and bring it in like that, because that's going to give me the top exactly, the same curve as that. And like 1.25 inches is pretty close to, so I'm just going to go like that and break that apart. And then that leaves us with this line. We don't need all of it, so I'm just going to trim this away, and then I'll be stuck with the line that I wanted to keep. So I would usually do that as opposed to drawing this line, just because that way I know it's going to match. And same thing for this wood in here, I don't need that one. And that way the curve actually goes through the design and matches that way as well. Another thing that we could do if we're drawing this from scratch, right, is that we could take this piece and contour this one inward also. By contouring a single line, it ends up going all the way around it. So you'd have to break that apart. And then you would delete the pieces that you don't need anymore. Virtual segment does work if it's hitting an intersection, but you can also just grab the nodes. So I can grab like from this node there and hold shift, and it would select until that node. And then I can just hit delete, and it will get rid of those nodes for me. So we just keep drawing it like that. What I was going to say is that if we drew it this way, then what we could do is we could make it so that the flower itself is a separate object than everything. So I'm just going to separate. I want to delete that, but I'm going to separate this. That way I can draw this flower as its own piece of artwork. That way, if you wanted to reuse this design or use this design in the future, you could use it with a different flower or design altogether. So I'll grab this line. I don't need that one anymore. I know this is going to look a little different because I was basing it off of the shape of the stone, but you also said that it didn't need to be exact, so we're going to do it this way. Feel free if you have any questions on anything that I'm doing, feel free to ask while I'm doing it.
I think I'm understanding so far.
And by drawing a center line, I mean, if all I need to do is make sure that these line up and touch each other in order for it to work correctly. So I'm just, again, drawing my center. That. Some people prefer to use different drawing tools like Bezier or those other tools because you're actually curving the line as you draw it. For me, I find it faster to go ahead and just click and make my lines the way that I want them and then go and bend them later. It just seems faster for me to do it this way. So that's why I use this method, but there's, I'm sure there's 100 different ways you can go about doing it. Each person is different, so find the way that works for you. It's fast and sometimes if I can't quite bend this the way that I need it to, and I should be able to, but if I can't quite bend it the way that I need it to, you can just double click in here to add a node. And then I hit C as soon as I do that on the keyboard, because that will then cusp that node and make it so that I can basically change this portion of it without affecting that side of it. Just pull that in. And as long as these touch, when we do our convert to curve or convert the outline to curves or to an object, whatever it's called, convert outline to object, then they will weld the right way. If there was a gap like this, if there was a gap like that, then it's not going to weld it the right way probably, unless the thickness is big enough to compensate for that gap. But slow again. And with the Polyline tool, the way that you do it is you basically just click, move your mouse, click again, move your mouse, click again. If you click and drag, it will do a curved segment. So I could do it that way. And if I was using my pen, I would more than likely do it that way. So I just click and drag as opposed to doing each of those lines. And then you double click to end your line. So if you forget to double click, you can always just delete that end piece. So if these aren't touching, I would want to move that up until they do touch. And if these aren't quite where they're matching up, you know, because this line and this line are the ones that are combined together, it's going to give me a little bit of a point there. And so if I really wanted to care about that, I could break this node apart right there, move this one back, and then these two, I combine those ones together. I can join those ones instead. And that way, this one, when it comes up, is just going to hit that the right way. So it also depends on how your, lines and nodes and stuff are coming to a point or coming to meet each other, if it works the right way. So occasionally it is better to break those apart from each other so that those nodes meet differently. And that really has to do with, how I'm drawing it and where I'm starting from, and that sort of stuff. But if I want it to be clean, I would want to match those up. So this is another similar thing where if I break this one apart and combine it with this one, then I can join these two nodes there. And this will just butt up against that correctly. Something like that. And then I'll just take a straight line from here to here. That original line that I drew anymore. If I know that there's something underneath one that I want to get to, I can hold Alt and click, and it will dig to the next lowest thing in the object stack. So if we're looking at the object stalker, this is the one that I had selected. Okay, so this one's the one I had selected, and it's stacked here. But if I know there's another piece there that I'm trying to get to, it's just not grabbing it correctly because it's grabbing the one that's on top. If I hold Alt while I click, it will dig further down the stack until it gets to the next image. If I do it again, still holding Alt and click again, it will dig to the next lowest thing, which is the reference bitmap. And if I hold Alt, it'll come back. So if I know that there's something underneath there I want, I can just hold Alt, click, and then hit delete. That way it's gonna delete that one I don't need anymore. Okay. Now these lines here, we're just going to trim those back with virtual segment delete. We don't need those. And I also forgot we were going to make this a separate object. Maybe we won't make it a separate object for this one because it is actually creating that bottom portion of the panel. Yeah, we'll just do it this way, I guess. So we won't make it a separate object. So we'll end up virtual segment deleting that. And drawing this. All right, so because these are all going to have standard line thicknesses, I'm going to combine all those together first. Okay, just like that. And then I'll apply my line width. And then I will, I can actually, it's okay if I duplicate this now. So I'll drag it over, combine those together. And if I shouldn't have to join these, but it'll be cleaner if we do. It'll take well, we don't even need to do that really. So we've got everything the way that we want it to be. And this is where I said, usually if I get the design like that, I would save this piece by itself before I convert everything to curves, because then it's going to be something that I can reuse later. And I'll just switch over to the 3-point for this. So I will also tell you that in your particular document that you have frost as your default fill. Normally in a document, I do not have, if I'm just drawing something like this, it's popping up with a frosted fill. I usually don't like to do that. I usually have no fill. So if I left click this swatch right here, it'll ask me if I want to change a document default. And I do want to change my document default back to the way that I like it. So I'll go ahead and click OK. And now you'll see down here, it says none for the fill. If you have nothing selected and you change any property like fill color or text, anything like that, then it's usually going to pop up that dialog. So anyway, so I went ahead and just left clicked on that and changed that. So now if I draw a new shape, it's not going to have that fill anymore. As opposed to me having to come in and, you know, pull that out. Okay. Almost done. All right, so we'll just go ahead and grab all of these. And we're going to take our artistic media, and I'm going to apply this one this time. And we can mess with the line thicknesses too. So what that does is it just makes it so that it's pointy on both ends, which seemed to be more like the way the original was. So I've got that artistic media, I've got this, I've got everything, you know, pretty much drawn the way that I would want it for the design. I can mirror these. If I hit my mirror objects button, it's not necessarily going to put it where I want it. So if I do that, let's just try and see what happens. It did actually work, so that's good. Probably because this object was locked. If this object wasn't locked, it would have found this as the object, the largest object, and it would have centered on that, which probably wouldn't have been okay. But it found this as the largest object and mirrored off of that, so that's good. So then I'd grab this and usually, you know, save it as its own piece. We've actually been working on this is a tool by John Quinn that's called Save Selection. I think it's called Save something as selection. Anyway, so if I click on that button, it will actually save this selected piece to its own file, which is nice because then I can go back and reuse that clip art later, and it puts it all together in the same place. So I would usually make a copy of that. If you don't, you can always go up to File and say Save As. And when you say, so if you go up to File and say Save As, then there's a checkbox here for Selected Only. So if you do Selected Only, then when you save it, it's only going to save this piece. So then I can get rid of that. I didn't really necessarily need to make a copy. I could have just grabbed this, did a Save As, Selected Only, and then got that out. But again, the reason I do that is so that I can reuse that later as an object that has you know, those lines applied to it. Because if I wanted to make this smaller, I can make it smaller, but it's going to keep my line widths the same way, the same thickness. So it'll still be sandblastable. If I wait and do it afterward, then that's not usually quite the case. So I'll grab all of these artistic media strokes minus these because those ones aren't artistic media strokes, and I'll hit the comma button on the keyboard and that will delete all the center lines for me. And then this big piece, I will hold Control-Shift-Q, and that will then make all those lines the correct thickness for me. Then all I need to do is fix the end pieces where these are touching. So I need to delete this one and delete this line, and then we'll grab these ones and extend those to a close, and we'll grab these outside ones and extend those to a closed path. I'm going to pull these ones in just ever so slightly. So that way when I fill grayscale, it's going to be able to find that the right way. If they're not, if this inside piece is not smaller than that outside piece, then fill grayscale is not going to work because it's not going to know. I think what I'll do is I'll actually virtual segment delete, and I'll pull it back to the edge, and then I will redo these. Extend those ones and extend those ones. If I do the inside ones first, then I find it faster if I grab these inside ones first and extend those. Then I can just re-grab all 4 of them and extend, and it will do just the top and bottom ones. Whereas if I do it backward, if I go like this and extend those, then it doesn't necessarily do it the way that I want. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So I just find it easier to manually grab them the way that I want. So we've got it all the way that we want, and then we'll just hit F to fill with grayscale. And I didn't really like the way that I drew this for some reason, so we're going to reverse the curve direction on that one so that that fills in the right way. Maybe it had something to do with the way that we flip these. I don't know. So I'm just going to grab these, and I'm hitting the slash button or the question mark button on my keyboard to change the curve direction on those because I didn't like them for some reason. So we've got that. And then if I look at, again, the original stone, these pieces in here aren't there. So I'll just virtual segment delete those. And same thing for this. I might keep that. Something like that. But now we've got that set, and then we would again just, kind of start with our text. And so I usually would start with the existing text. So E. Edward, and build from there. So I'd size this. And then go to the next one. Next one. More line. And then I would take all that text and hit C to center it all on itself. And then I would, well, usually I'd select the stone shape and hit C to center it to the stone shape. And then I can grab that and build my panel around it. If the panel, sorry, the panel itself, so it's going, if I build a panel around it, it's going to give me this spacing here. So maybe I don't necessarily want to do that. What I could do instead is, if I wanted to build the panel the exact same size as this existing one, is I could go ahead and just draw a rectangle like this. Okay, and get my rectangle the size that I want it to be. And then I'll just do a single line applied to that itself. And that's then not going to touch the text. So the text remains in that same spot. Otherwise, I could have it space the text, but I would have to know what that spacing was, so whether it was 5/8 or what. So I'd have to know what that spacing is, type it in here. And apply it. So totally up to you how you'd want to do it, but those are different ways of going about it. And one thing that Derek mentioned was wall drawing, to make it so that you can see your lines better, to use a red or a green or some different colored line while you're doing the drawing to see it better. Some people prefer to use colors. I myself don't. I actually find it more distracting than helpful. So I just use black lines myself, but totally up to you how you'd want to do it. You certainly can if you are drawing. So you can, as you're doing your drawing, if you right click on any of these colors over here, then that's going to give you the outline color. And that way you might be able to see things a little bit better if you like working in colors that way. But again, I don't do that just because I don't. To me, it's more distracting. But we'll fill this one in with 30%. We will grab the praying hands over here, throw them in the same spot. So what I did there is I clicked on this and hit C to center it, and you can see what happens is the line thicknesses now don't match up. So what I'd really want to do if I was going to center it is I'd want to group that first and then center the group. But I don't know that I necessarily do want to center the group. This one, if I hit shift page down, it will go to the back. This one I'll just unlock. I don't need it locked anymore. And if I still want to keep it as reference, I can keep it as a reference if I need to. Most of the time I don't need that. I'll grab all this stuff and right click on that to get rid of all my outlines. So I don't need the outlines anymore. This text over since that's new text. But now that I've got it drawn up this way, then I can swipe that text and change the text to match up. Obviously you've got an extra line of text in there, so maybe that's why it was different. So you'd have to play with that, whether or not you want to go with an extra line of text or not. But hopefully that shows you the steps that I would take anyway to go about duplicating something like that. Any questions on any?
I don't believe so. I think that actually just made it a lot simpler than what I was trying to do. I mean, like I said, this is probably somewhere between the 1st and 10th monument I've tried to do. So I really appreciate you just helping me through this, because it is a very new thing to me.
Yeah, no, not a problem. And I mean, that's, it's exciting that you're working on something new and learning new stuff. So I didn't really pay attention to this, but I should have. Some of these lines didn't quite turn out the way that I'd want them. So I'm gonna fix this up really quick. It's just me not paying attention. And these lines here, I would want them more to come to a point. So if I straighten that out. And usually if I add a node up in this area, I can delete these ones and it'll just be cleaner. So if I come in here and pull this down and just add a couple nodes up here and then delete these ones, then it will straighten that out for me a little nicer than if I were to try to manually go back and change it all. And then I can still usually, delete pieces. If there's too many nodes, because when you convert that outline to object, a lot of times it gives you more nodes than you need. You can select all those nodes and hit reduce nodes, and it will get rid of some of them. Or if you come up here and change your curve smoothness to something like 5 or 10, the more you change it, the bigger your number, the less it's going to look like the original, but the more or the less nodes it's going to have, and the less nodes you have, the faster it's going to cut. So it's totally up to you. I'll usually do that. I'll make the changes, then I'll just kind of undo and redo a bunch of times so that I can visually see if it's changed too much. In this case, it doesn't really change all that much, so I'd probably just keep it that way, cleaned up. And then, of course, once that's all done, got this. Grab it and fill it in with granite fill, and it should be fillable. So there you have it, start to finish on that little piece there. I'll go ahead and save this one for you. I can send it to you just in case you want to use this version. I'm going to down save because I don't know what version of CorelDRAW you're using, but in case it's not 2021, I'll down save it and save. The only other thing that I wanted to cover today is I had somebody asking about how to see images when you're importing or opening things up. He was saying that when he did that, so I'm just going to go and find, let's go ahead and import. So you can't see these designs right now, and under organize, some people have the preview pane checked. So if you have the preview pane checked and you click on something, it may or may not show you what you're hoping to see. So if I click on, just go ahead and come in here. Let's find designs here. So if I click on these designs, I have it set up so that the preview pane will actually show pretty much what's on the page because I resize the page for every design. But if you start a design from scratch, this preview pane over here only shows what's inside your page border. So your page border, if it's an 8.5 by 11 and you're starting a new document, most of the time you're not paying attention to that because I hide the page border. So in this particular case, this file that we just saved, Burton fixed, if I went and went to open up that design, and I went to the downloads, oh, there it is right there, cancel. Scrolling down to Burton fixed. Too many files in my downloads folder. Where did it go? Maybe I'm not in the same place. Downloads. Different place. I was in a different downloads folder. Okay, so if I click on Burton fixed here, you'll see that I only see what's on the page, right? And if we look at where our page border is right there behind this stone. And so you're not seeing everything that's in that document. You're only seeing what's on that page. So you'd have to either one, change the page size, and in 2021, 0.5, I think they added it in 2021. There's a auto fit where I can auto fit that page size. And then if I resave this, and if I looked back at the same place, the preview pane is going to give me a little different look to it because it's going to show me what's on the page. But normally you're not messing with pages. Normally the page is hidden anyway. And so you're only going to see what's inside that 8.5 by 11 area. So if I click on this now you'll see, there's one page, and there's the other 2 pages that existed in the document. But I find that this isn't even the best looking image anyway. And so I don't normally use the preview pane. I'll normally turn off the preview pane and just use thumbnails. And on the thumbnails, if you have, medium size or smaller sized thumbnails, you can't view those as well either. So I usually do extra large icons for my thumbnails so that I'm able to see a little bit better what they are. But you can do different sizes there. But the question was asked on how that works, how that's why it is on the preview pane that they couldn't see everything that was inside the design. And it all has to do with the page border and keeping everything inside that page border. So just wanted to point that out in this one, and we should be good to go. Next week, we will be doing it at 11 instead of 10:30. So that'll be our new time, is Fridays at 11. So hopefully that works out. Sorry for any inconvenience today, and thanks for being here. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much. See you next week.
See ya.